and your focus by joining us here today to receive our special gifts that last all year long is really appreciated. I see you, the team sees you, and know that this is truly your Women's Fund. So thank you for showing up to your Women's Fund. And behind the scenes is an incredible team. You know many of them, but there's also an incredible board of directors who really do so much to focus our entire community on women and girls and benefiting the entire community, lifting all boats. So we see you, board members, and we thank you, board members. I want to give a very special shout out of gratitude to Marilyn Gladstone, our founder. These are times of reflection, and there is nothing more exciting than recognizing the bold vision of our founder, Marilyn Gladstone, and the cohort of amazing humans who started the Women's Fund way over 30 years ago. They didn't know exactly where it was going. They just knew that something had to be done. So people have been rolling up their sleeves for 10, 20, 30, 33 years. And we thank you, Marilyn, so much for that vision. Talk about vision. Our community partners, our pillar sponsors are with us all year long. The Carrie Meek Foundation is unique in not only partnering with us as our Freedom from Violence pillar sponsor, but they do incredible work day in and day out, carrying on the legacy of Congresswoman Carrie Meek. So in the same spirit, we honor Congresswoman Carrie Meek today as well. This is the Freedom from Violence pillar sponsorship public awareness campaign. No time more important than the holidays to make sure that all of our kids are safe. Young, not so young. Firearms are not toys. They need to be put away. They will be perceived as toys. So we're asking each and every one of you to reach out to your networks and remember these critical things. When your kids or your friends' kids are going to play at somebody else's house, please ask, are there firearms? If there are they locked up? And then you can send your kid over. Thank you so much. So on we go. Again, your Impact Collaborative, your Women's Fund. There will be 3 polls. They're really fun. And we pay attention to them. So please, please, please participate in all of the polls. Do put your questions for Vivana in the Q&A icon. If you put them in the chat, I'm likely to find them too, but even easier if you put them in the Q&A icon. And right after we're done, you'll get an exit survey. And those exit surveys inform our work, but they also end up in the annual report, and they also end up in reports to funders. So please fill it out. It's really short, and we're grateful for your participation. So I'm dressed like a present because we have a present today. We have the present of year-long presence of our director of research and policy. That means a lot. And behind that title is a lot of work that we do only because of you, because of our community, because the Women's Fund exists to leverage resources on behalf of women and girls, and then thus lift the whole community. We cannot do that without each and every one of you here today. And those of you who spend a lot of time at the Women's Fund know we mean it. And those of you who are new, we're thrilled to have you join us and take these tools away with you all year long. Viviana, please take it away.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everybody. I want to express also my gratitude for all of you being here today. I know December is a funky month, so thank you for spending it this morning with us and learning more about our research tools and our research program. So as Maria mentioned, I am the Director of Research and Policy here at the Women's Fund in Miami-Dade, and it is my absolute pleasure to walk you through our 3 tools. We're going to be covering the Gender Equity Dashboard, the Gender Equity Index, and the Miami-Dade Self-Sufficiency Standard. If you have questions, as Mara mentioned as well, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will be going over those, or in the Q&A tool, and we will be going over those at the end of the trainings. I want to start by mentioning that here at the Women's Fund, we believe that when data doesn't have a gender lens, it makes women and girls invisible. That's why we're very much in this work, making sure that gender data is available and accessible to the broader community and to all of those that need it. And we aim to create evidence-based understanding of the conditions of women and girls through data here in Miami-Dade County. It helps us focus our efforts on addressing the key issues and needs that women and girls are experiencing. With that, we're going to start with the Miami-Dade Gender Equity Dashboard. This tool was really born out of that need of having gendered data accessible and available to the broader community in a more easy to access, easy to understand way. It first went live in October of 2021 with the first phases of the metric focusing on our 4 pillars. So we have a section on economic mobility, leadership, health and well-being, and freedom from violence. And how is it used? The dashboard is really used to identify gaps and needs in our community, to advance policy development with a gender lens, and to reduce the gap in gender data, right? That's really key. Who uses it, or who do we want to use it? Everybody, basically. But we also want decision makers to use it, both public and private sector, as well as government agency, community-based organizations like a lot of you here today, funders, and philanthropists. Now, I'm going to show you a very sneak peek, and then we're going to really go in, and I'm going to show you how to exactly use it. This is a sneak peek in how it looks. So bear with me as I stop sharing my screen, or stop sharing the slide, and I go back to the dashboard. So actually, I'm going to show you first how to get there. So when you go to our web page, this is our main page. This is our home page. From here, you want to go to the little 3 lines on the side and go into our data and research page. In our data and research page, you can find all of the information that I'm going to go through today. You'll have access to the dashboards, the Gender Equity Index, our reports, and our resources. So if you click on dashboards, it will bring you down to our Gender Equity Dashboard and our Miami-Dade Self-Sufficiency Standard Dashboard, which we'll be going over in a bit. So once you click on here, it's going to take you to Tableau Public, which is where this Gender Equity Dashboard is housed. And it takes a little minute because it has a lot of great data, and so it's a little bit slow. We're working to improve all of that, but just hang on tight with me here. It's going to take us a little minute. I think I might have it open here, actually. Okay, there we go. This is what it's supposed to look like. So once you go into the actual dashboard, you have different sections that I mentioned, right? You have our 4 pillars. You also have a dashboard description, what the Women's Fund is, and a list of community resources. I won't be going into those today, but just know that they are available for you. If you scroll down, you also have a section on demographics. That is for us to really understand the composition of the population in Miami-Dade County. I won't be going into that one as either, but it's there if you need to see it. What I'm going to start with is the economic mobility section. And again, as I mentioned, lots of data. Hang on tight. Of course, it decides to load super slowly. There we go. Okay. What you have here, starting from the top, is our economic mobility section. Each section will include what you should know. What do you need to know without even looking at the data? What does it include? So in the economic mobility section, you're going to see the median full-time earnings, labor force participation, poverty, unemployment, and you also get a little map on the median full-time earnings by census tract. At the top, so you'll get a little bit more information and just a couple of sentences on that here. And what you're going to see as well is these filters on gender, race, ethnicity, and our little legend here that you can browse through in case you are confused about any of the colors. And what you have is that you're able to click on like the different metrics, so labor force, poverty, unemployment, and it is meant to be an interactive tool. So for example, if all you want to see is female, you can just click on that one, and that's exactly what you're seeing. You hover over certain points and you'll get the exact data metrics as well, right? So you can't see it all, right? But as long as you hover over the certain points, you'll have a little caption that pops up and you'll be able to see it. Now, this also includes other sections here at the top. It includes a section on education, on childcare, and households. But because we have a lot to cover, I'm not going to go into all of those. And kind of want to go back really quickly and show you health and well-being, leadership, and freedom from violence. Just a quick glimpse. This is the health and well-being section. It includes the same type of information. Here you'll find life expectancy, the OBGYN rate, and insurance coverage. And here you have a drop-down menu also, depending on which one you want to look at. If you want to look at percent, for percent insured, employer insured, private insured, and public insured. And we tried to make this also a little bit more visually appealing with the maps, so you can hover over those and find more information. In this section, you'll find mental health data, disability health data, and maternal and infant health data. And as always, you have a click here for the main dashboard. So you can go back and go into a different pillar. That's what I've been clicking. For leadership, you have the percentage. Here you have a lot of the elected officials and what percentage are female versus male. You also have voter registration and voter turnout rates. And this one's a little bit, this is more graph charts. You have drop-down menus as well. And it's broken down into the congressional representation, Florida representation, and local representation at the top. So there's a lot of great information on here that we want to make sure that you're using. Which, by the way, if you are using it, please let us know. We will really want to know how you use the data. And then lastly, our freedom from violence pillar. Here you'll find information on human trafficking, child abuse, domestic violence, forcible sex offenses, and overall crime as well. You'll notice that a lot of these metrics, well, some of them don't include race and ethnicity data, and that is because the data is actually not available. So due to that, we have just included what's available out there, but we're working really hard to make sure that it is as comprehensible as possible. And that is our gender equity dashboard. And now let me go back to my presentation. And it locked me out. Mari, I'm going to pass it to you for a second because I need to sign it.
So I'm getting really active in the chat because it's really hard, as the team knows, for me to be quiet. We find this stuff really exciting because it really informs our work. So we always say that we are weaving a stronger fabric for Miami-Dade, right? So there are amazing people here. There are people here from NAMI. There are people here from amazing banks, from law firms, there's so many community partners here. Incredible leaders like Gloria Romero Roses, who's here, who helped us decide to go into research and data to have the facts that would be able to back up the stories that we always had from our grantee partners and our community partners. So we find these tools really exciting. If you don't need to go so far in the weeds, know that your Women's Fund is working and putting together white papers and recommendations based on a lot of these things, and the tools that Vivi is going to give you now are a little bit simpler to yield.
Yes. Thank you, Maria. So now that we're back and running, because obviously I had to be signed out, here is a quote from Dr. Alexandra Cornelius. She is the Associate Teaching Professor and Director of Women's Studies History at FIU. And she says the Women's Fund Miami-Dade Data and Research page is an excellent resource for educators who want to teach students how to secure and analyze data. Women's Fund Gender Equity Dashboard, for example, features responsibly collected data on the status of women and girls' economic mobility, health and well-being, leadership, and physical and emotional safety. Now more than ever, the ability to identify and use fact-based research will be key to efforts to create evidence-based solutions that will impact the everyday lives of the people in Miami-Dade County. I use it in my class so that my students learn to appreciate the wonderful, powerful ways in which data may be used to persuasively support their arguments and to contest unfounded claims. So thank you, Dr. Cornelius, for sharing that with us. Now we're going to move into the Gender Equity Index. We were talking this morning about my favorite tool, and I think this might be it. Don't tell the other tools, because I think it is there was a lot of effort that went into creating this tool. And we believe that with the Gender Equity Index, we're able to measure progress towards gender equity in Miami-Dade County, and we want people to use this tool to do just that. We know that data drives decision-making, action, and policy change. So the GEI, for short, provides actionable data to inform and assist policymakers and the broader community in improving gender equality. With the GEI, we also included policy recommendations at the end of each policy paper that supports data-driven, collaborative, and sustainable solutions to document gender disparities. And I will be showing those, but those are going to be more for you to dive into when you have time, just because there's so much information in those policy papers. Now, the Gender Equity Index was created using the United Nations Gender Inequity Index as a basis. And what it includes is a score. How far or how close are we to achieving gender equity in Miami-Dade County? And there's an overall score, which I'll show in a second, but it is also composed of 4 different scores that reflect our pillars. So you have economic mobility score, a health and well-being score, a leadership score, and a freedom from violence score. And within each of these, you have specific metrics that we believe reflect gender equity within each of those pillars. Now, a lot of thought and effort went into picking each of these metrics, and we have also more information on how and why we chose them in our policy papers, if that's something that's of interest to you, along with our methodology for the GEI. For the economic mobility pillar, you are going to find information, or we make sure to include full-time employment, median full-time earnings, bachelor degree or higher, high paid positions, and poverty. For health and well-being, we included health insurance, maternal morbidity, infant mortality, disability, and teenage pregnancy. And for leadership, we included voter turnout, representation in elected positions, and voter registration rates. For freedom from violence, we included domestic violence, sex offenses, overall crime, and human trafficking. So that's just a glimpse. Now let's dive deep into it. In 2022, and just please note that oftentimes data will be 2 years behind. So we're actually the 2024 update, which was for the 2022 data that was available. Now we're currently working on the 2025 update, which will have 2023 data, right? So it's not per year like that. In 2022, the gender equity score for Miami-Dade County was 52 points, a 1-point improvement from 51 point in 2021. And so what we have here is also our meter of how close or how far we are from that green area that we really want to reach, right? This 100% equity, or even closer to the 70%. So right now we're a little bit at the middle. And what you'll see here is the 11-year trajectory of the Gender Equity Index. So we went back in time to show you and make sure that we were able to address the progress that was being made over the last 10 years. So for the overall score, we're a little less, or a little bit, a little bit less from the score in 2010, which was 53 points. And you can see how it changed throughout the years. Max was 54 points in 2014 and 2015. Now, I want to show each of the pillars because I think it's important to highlight how these have progressed or decreased or what it is included in them. The economic mobility score was 57 points in 2022, which is actually a 5-point drop from the score in 2010, which means that we are doing worse. The score in 2010 was 62 points. And as a reminder, it included a lot of these. This has to do due to a variety of reasons, the number one being women's median full-time earnings for 2022, which were 18% below those of men. That is the gender pay gap. And here in the graph, you'll see how that has moved over time. The gender pay gap increased by 6 percentage points from 2021, which was 13%, and currently at its highest since 2019, which was at 19%. In Miami-Dade, women earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by men. And all of this information that I'm showing is on the website, so you can always refer back to that. Now, for health and well-being, the health and well-being score was 44 points in 2022, indicating a 3-point drop from the 2010 score at 47 points. Health and well-being was at its highest in 2011 and 2012 at 50 points. And this one is very much attached to maternal outcomes. Here you see maternal morbidity and how it's actually has been increasing. And we saw it spiked up in 2020. It has fluctuated, but it saw the largest increase to 25.3 per 1,000 delivery hospitalizations in 2020. Since then, the rate has decreased, but only by 0.2, as the rate for 2020 was 24.8, right? So we see it really fluctuate, but really go steadily increase. And this is a major force behind the health and well-being score. For leadership, the leadership score was 52 points in 2022, indicating an 8-point increase from 44 points in 2021, which is great. And you'll see for this one that it's 2 years, right? The same score will apply to 2 years, and that is because it is tied to the elections. So voter turnout and voter registration, and as well as the representation of elected officials, because the elections run in 2-year cycles. That is why you'll have like consecutive score and not an individual per year. We saw very much an increase in the score, and that is very much tied to voter registration, voter turnout, actually, because women have higher rates of voter registration and voter turnout. However, for representation in elected positions, women remain underrepresented and falling behind a national trend. Women constituted 34% of elected positions compared to 66% of men in 2022. And last but not least, freedom from violence was 55 points in 2022, indicating a 2-point increase from 2010 score of 53 points. The major driver, and I will talk a little bit more about the freedom from violence score, because this was a complicated score to calculate, to collect data for, and this is because of the gender data gap. There is a lack of gender data in the domestic violence and sexual violence reports that are produced by a lot of the police departments. And so we had to go one by one to these different police departments in Miami-Dade County, that's more than 30, and ask for the data. A lot of them didn't have the data, or they had various reasons for not being able to provide us with the data. So unfortunately, the domestic violence, especially, and the sexual violence metrics include only data from the Miami-Dade Police Department, Miami Beach, and City of Miami, right? So if we're talking 3 out of 30 plus municipalities and police departments, it is not a lot. However, because most of the data is coming from Miami-Dade County Police Department, it does include the majority of the county. And this is what you see for the sexual violence metric. Women experience sexual violence at a significantly greater rate than men. This is not a surprise. I feel like most of us know that this is the case. However, it is interesting to see how the rate for sexual violence experienced by men does fluctuate and does increase at certain points. But again, it's harder for us to have the entire picture, because we are missing other parts of the county. And this is actually something that we're very strongly advocating for, to make sure that we include as much gender data as possible. You can find a lot more information on this as well on our website, which I will go over in a minute. So what we saw is that the worst performing pillar is health and well-being, with 44 points, and it's a decrease of the 2010 score from 47 points. The best performing pillar, surprisingly, is economic mobility at 57 points, even though it did see a 5-point drop from 62 points in 2010. And the most improved are leadership with 52 points, an 8-point increase from 44 points in 2021, and freedom from violence with 55 points, currently at its highest, increasing from 53 in 2010. Now, this is where it gets really fun. I want to go into, and really quickly, we have one-pagers for each of these pillar scores. So if you don't want to read the policy paper, that's okay. Not everybody has time for that. We can go over the one-pagers. Now, I want to go into the website so you can see the flow and have a better understanding of how it goes. Here is a website, and what you have here is also, if you're interested in a particular pillar and you want to learn more just about that one, you can just jump to that section by clicking on one of these. You can subscribe to get also more information about the DEI by clicking this. And it goes over each of the sections and with a lot more information. Now, you also have access to the GEI explainer policy paper that just basically goes over our methodology and a lot more information on the Gender Equity Index. This is on Quick Insights, is where you'll find the one-pagers. We have a 2023 release and a 2024 release, and in March of 2025, you will see the 2025 release. And with each of these sections, you'll also find not just one of the metrics, but actually 2 of the metrics. So if you're interested in learning more or seeing more about on the visualizations, you can go on there. Each of the sections also includes the policy paper that I mentioned, and you can go in here, find more information, click on whatever you like. Also, I know that this is a lot of information, so if any point you have questions, feel free to email me. My team will drop my email in the chat. Thank you, team. And it goes all the way down to freedom from violence, and you can subscribe to our mailing list. Now, let me go back to my slides. Poll 2, I think it was already launched. And we have a quick video.
Hi, I'm Angeline Evans from YWCA South Florida. We have found the Women's Fund data tools to be extremely valuable in grant funding and as well as for utilization in our programs around gender-specific issues. The Gender Equity Index provides gender-specific and updated data, particularly helpful in our grant applications for maternal health outcomes and economic prosperity. The self-sufficiency standard is something that we've utilized to inform and educate our local business leaders and community leaders about the realities facing women today.
And that was Angeline Evans
I'm Angeline Evans from YWC.
from YWCA. She talked a little bit about the GEI, and she also talked about the Miami-Dade Self-Sufficiency Standard, which is our next tool. And I do apologize for breezing through these, but just want to make sure that we get all the information on there. So I'm excited to dive into questions in a little bit. Now, the Miami-Dade Self-Sufficiency Standard is our newest tool. It came out in August of this year, and it is a fantastic tool. I think it's my current favorite, because it is the amount of money that a family needs in order to reach self-sufficiency without any public or private help. That means that the tool shows you how much that family needs to be making hourly, monthly, and annually. Now, this is a really interactive tool, so this is just only a little glimpse, and I'm actually going to go to the website to show you exactly how it works. This is a webpage for the Miami-Dade Self-Sufficiency Standard. And a real question is, can you afford to live in Miami-Dade? It highlights the housing and childcare crisis in Miami-Dade County that impacts all families, and it reveals the economic realities that these families face. Now, this is also a tool that is developed with data that is provided by the University of Washington. They created the self-sufficiency standard, and it is available for all 50 states. The data that we're using is specific to Miami-Dade County because it is actually broken down by county in some states, and it is 2024 data. So this is like the most recent stuff available. And this is the tool. So as I mentioned, it is an interactive tool. And so what you can do is actually build your own family. If you want to know how much I need to be making annually or monthly, and it is reloading. Okay, here we go. So let's say our family has 2 adults. They have 1 infant, 1 preschooler, and 1 school-age child. That means that this family needs to be making an annual income of $138,000 in order to meet self-sufficiency, right? And we're talking basic costs. So it includes housing, childcare, healthcare, food, transportation, broadband and cell phone, and other necessities, as well as taxes. So we're just covering the bare minimum. And again, the important factor here is that it doesn't include any private or public help, right? As those often offset some of the costs that families experience. But without those helps, this is how much that family needs to be making. Now, let's say we have 1 adult, let's say it's because we are the Women's Fund, it's a single mom, and she has 1 preschooler and 1 school-age child. She needs to be making $93,000 annually in order to provide bare minimum to her family, right? So that is a 44 hourly rate and a monthly $7,785. You have a lot of explanation on here as you hover over certain numbers as well. It will show you the methodology behind it. And I'm going to also provide at the end the website for the University of Washington that has very detailed information on the methodology. It's really fun to play with this tool just because you really can get deep into how much goes into what the costs that are needed for each family. And as you'll see, because we have the different age groups, it will vary greatly, right? So an infant actually costs a lot more than a preschooler, and a preschooler costs more than a teenager. So those are some things to keep in mind. What you'll see here as well is that at the top, you have what looks like 3 different tabs. So in here, the Explore How Much Is Enough, you have this interactive tool. Then you can go into the Standard Varies by Family Type. And what you have here is a comparison between 1 adult family and 2 adult family and how much they need to be making on an hourly rate to reach that self-sufficiency standard. So one adult with one infant needs to be making $38 an hour, but if it's a two-adult household, they only need to be making $22 each. Right, and so on and so forth. It has the different compositions of one adult, one preschooler, one school-age child, one adult, one school-age child, plus one teenager. Right, so you can really go in there and dive deep into what interest you have in learning about the different family compositions. And then the third tab is actually comparing it to the standard of other benchmarks. So what we did here is that we have the self-sufficiency standard for one adult, one preschooler, and one school-age child at an annual self-sufficiency standard of $93,415. Now that compares to the annual minimum wage, which is actually $24,960. The federal poverty guidelines, which are $25,000, $820, and the median family income for Miami-Dade County, which is $79,400. And what you have is that a single parent earning the minimum wage actually needs to work 149.7 hours per week in order to meet this annual self-sufficiency standard, right? In order to meet the $93,000. Which is quite shocking, especially as when we were calculating and putting all this together, it really was shocking to see that that parent needed to work so much in order just to meet basic needs. Now, it's not just all doom and gloom here. We actually provide policy recommendations. And what you have here is some of the policy recommendations that are also included in our economic mobility score for the Gender Equity Index. And what it includes is some of ways into which we can address some of these challenges, including paid parental leave, government regulation of of pay equity, and especially support for early childhood learning programs. Now, that is key because housing and childcare are the biggest expenses for families in Miami-Dade County. And because housing is also one of them, we have partnered with the Miami Homes for All, and they have provided us with some policy recommendations on how we can improve housing in Miami. I won't go over all of this, but just know that it is here and we provide solutions, which is the most important thing. You also have a section to learn more about the self-sufficiency standard. Here, you'll learn what it is, how it started, what does it include, and why we need it, and also how to use it along with the ALICE report. The ALICE report is the report that is produced by the United Way, and it has a lot of great information. It's actually supposed to be a complement to the ALICE report, so you can use both of those in conjunctions if you're trying to write a grant with data and information. You can use both of these tools. And then you have a section on the methodology behind the SSS, self-sufficiency standard, and you have links. So the self-sufficiency-standard.org will take you to the University of Washington webpage where you can learn a lot more. And I'm going to go back. So that is the Miami-Dade self-sufficiency standard. What you saw there was these are some of our social media tiles. Hourly income needed for self-sufficiency in Miami-Dade for one adult with full-time, and the self-sufficiency standard, which only 32% of Miami-Dade residents meet, right? So we have a long way to go in order for everybody to be able to afford to live in Miami-Dade County and to afford to have children in Miami-Dade County. And I have another video.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Pounds, and here at the Center of Hope Emergency Shelter, we are grateful for the work of the Women's Fund Miami-Dade. At the Salvation Army, we regularly use the self-sufficiency standards to inform our grant writing process. We appreciate that this data is modifiable, and factors such as childcare costs, housing costs, healthcare, cell phone payments, so on and so forth can be added to this tool. We all know there's an affordable housing crisis, and the self-sufficiency standards exactly why this crisis exists. Did you know that a single mother with 2 children must work over 150 hours weekly to earn and maintain a comfortable living situation for her family? We appreciate that the self-sufficiency standards pull from over 700 different family types. We understand that this data is reliable and that working families are in crisis in our great community. Again, thank you, Women's Fund Miami-Dade, for creating such a user-friendly tool that proves to our donors, that prove to our stakeholders why our services are so very desperately needed. And the information is hyper-specific to neighborhoods in Miami-Dade County. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Good morning. My name.
There we go. Okay. So I know that was a lot of information about these 3 different tools, but I wanted, and I kind of breezed through them, but I wanted to make sure that we had enough time for this Q&A section. So please use the Zoom tool, Q&A tool, as well as the chat to add in your questions, as we will be addressing them now. Also, poll 3, please answer the polls. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can dive deeper. And Mara, you want to come back?
I am back. And Gloria Romero Roses asked a great question, and I want both of us to answer it since I've seen it first. She's in the spirit of, of the season. In the holiday spirit, what would be 3 wishes for enhancing or bridging data gaps that you've identified? So I'll go first because I had a chance to think about it. So you think about it, Viv. Okay. I'm going to steal one that we all know. Gloria and everyone, it's gobsmacking that we cannot get gender data on violence from all the police departments in a standardized way, and we often have to pay for it when we can even get it. So it's incredible, and the more of us that understand that this exists, the more of us can raise our voices together. That we obviously can do this as a community. It's about will. It's about will. We were at a wonderful breakfast yesterday. As I keep on saying, we exist to collaborate with others, and it's so exciting to see so many thriving partner nonprofits. The Girl Scouts have put out together a state report on the status of the girl, which is terrific. And school board member Luisa Santos put something on that. Maybe a lot of people know. I know Dr. Maria Ilcheva already knew, and others, but I didn't know that the school district is not collecting gender data on girls, and that's clear. So I would say that both public and private schools collect gender data to make those girls, to make everyone visible. Who needs help and where should it go? It's crazy that we don't have that. And then I would just add on to that, it reinforces every time that we're all together that we need to keep on creating stone soup in one pot, right? That we should keep on adding all of this research and the data and working together to not, create newer wheels. So we really look forward to collaborating with everybody in the community to get this data in one place and easy to consume bowls of stone soup. So that's our hope, that we get to keep on collaborating with all of our community partners and local governments and corporations as well to get as much data we can in one place. So those are my 3, and go ahead, Viv.
Okay, so Gloria, thank you so much for the great question. There's so much that I would really like to enhance. But the 3 major one, I would actually say, in agreeing with you, Maria, gendered data, just gender data, right? Making it more available and collecting it, right? When we're talking about the difficulties that we had even in collecting gender data for domestic violence victims and sexual offenses victims, it is crazy that it is not available. If it is collected, and how do we access it, right? So that's definitely my number 1. Number 2, local data. It's oftentimes really easy to find a lot of national statistics. So how can we bring that down to the local level? And then number 3, which is a very complicated topic, a lot of my number 3 wish is definitely to have more diversity in the data. We think about gender and what is available is actually male, female, right? So we are not thinking about we're not sure what is included in that male female, right? Does it include trans women, trans men? Does it include the LGBTQI plus community? How are people identifying? Or a lot of the times the way that data is collected is identifying the person already. So they're not able to self-identify. And that is huge. I just want to plug in that as we continue to work around the collection of data. We're actually working with the Women's Funding Network and Candid on a very special project that will highlight nonprofit leaders and the demographics for those nonprofit leaders. And that data is actually very much self-identified data. So it's just really great to know that there is work being done around this, but that is a major issue that I wish we could keep on addressing. So I'll say those 3.
I'm gonna let everybody know that Vivi's on the national cohort for that. A lot of the work that Women's Fund is doing here locally is scalable, and Viviana is got some real leadership on a national level. I'll have to give you kudos for that. Next question for you, Vivi. What has been the biggest challenge in developing these tools, and how can we support their usage?
Two
Two
loaded
big parts of that question.
Biggest challenges are how digestible a lot of this information is. We have been trying to break it down as much as possible, but I think we still struggle with making it very understanding for everybody that uses it, right? So you don't have to know how to use the census. We do that for you. However, sometimes how we're presenting the data can still be a little complicated if you're not a data science nerd like a lot of us, right? So we are working on making it a lot more digestible and making sure that you all have the key facts of what really you should know about the data. And then there are just so many ways that everybody can be using this, because I think it is quite, not to toot our own horns, but maybe toot a little bit. The fact that we have this in one place is quite groundbreaking. What we've done is really do the work for you, right? So we're looking at the census, we're looking at Florida charts for health information, we're going to the different police departments in Miami-Dade County, gathering that data for you. We are gathering primary data on the representation of elected officials. So you have that in a lot of, especially in the dashboard, you have that in a one-stop shop. So making sure that you're just able to go in, get the information you need, and write it in a grant. Do a one-pager if you're really advocating for something, right? Especially as community leaders. Put it in a one-pager that you can go to your policymakers and address the certain issues that you have. So there's just a lot of great ways that we can be using and interacting with this data. Also, if there's anything on there that or something that you don't see on there, let us know. We love to think about ways that we can enhance the data that's available and just innovate the way that we're creating the tools.
Yes, and Dr. Ilcheva put that in the chat, so please answer. What else would you like to see? I want to add to that. The Miami-Dade self-sufficiency standard, if we have to pick a favorite child, is currently mine. And why is that? Because it works for everyone. If you are a business owner or work in a corporation, and you take the Miami-Dade self-sufficiency standard and you look at it and you can say, we as a corporation or as a business or as a foundation not only want to support our workforce, understanding the challenges of our local economy and the cost of living, but all of us need to advocate to Tallahassee, to the commissions, to our elected officials to say that the resources, the public resources are necessary for our entire economy to thrive. We use the Miami-Dade self-sufficiency standard a lot to say it doesn't matter if you don't have an infant. We don't have a workforce if we do not support early child learning centers. So that can be private support, and that's a terrific thing that we'll be working on with our innovation grant from the Children's Trust. But also all businesses need to support early learning subsidies, not only because 80% of those brains are formed in those first years, and that's your future workforce, but also because people can't afford women. It's a huge impediment to women's economic mobility if they don't have quality childcare. So for our economy, use the Miami-Dade self-sufficiency standard, and supporting that usage, I think will get all of us a long way fast. So Viv, next question. What has been your most interesting or puzzling finding through the self-sufficiency standard?
Through the self-sufficiency standard, I think it was quite shocking to see how high costs are. And I say this within the context of a lot of times you'll hear in the community, oh, it's so expensive to live in Miami. It's so expensive to live in Miami, or there's a housing crisis, there's a childcare crisis. We're showing you, yeah, that is absolutely true. It is fact-based. It is backed up by the numbers that we have available. Um, and it was quite shocking because I was able to look at the self-sufficiency standard for other states, and other counties in other states, and to know that it is so high, it is very high in Miami-Dade. That 150 hours for minimum wage work was really quite surprising, and just in comparison to the other benchmarks was very, very surprising. Uh, but it's also not meant to be scary. And I think that's the most important thing to take away. It's really not meant to scare people. I think it's to validate what people are seeing and what people are experiencing. Making sure that, yes, you think it is very difficult to live here because prices are really high. Yes, you're absolutely true. This is exactly what the data is showing. Now, this is what we can do about it, right? So really making sure that we support the early learning work, making sure that we're advocating for pay equity, right? Women lose millions of dollars within their lifetime because of pay equity. Women are not able to have the same type of generational wealth, and they are more likely to have less income or less retirement income or savings when they are older. And yet we live longer. Right? So women are living longer with less money to spend on the economy. So I think those are really important things to keep in mind. A lot of this is it just validates. The data is validating what you're experiencing every single day.
But we're bringing focus to this because we kind of know it's niggling in the back, but we need to keep these conversations alive and bring them every single place we go. Like John Bitterman, it says this tool should be utilized in high schools to prepare young adults for the real world and the real cost of living and self-sufficiency. That's so true, right? So this is for dinner tables and tables and the legislature as well. I'm going to ask the next questions, but I want you all to know both Arathi Ramappa and Dr. Maria Ilteva have put great questions for the audience in the chat. So please do feel free to answer there as well. Let's get some brainstorming going here. So Diego Garcia, thank you so much for this. So what are the main goals, Viviana, for the development of the indexes in the future? And what areas would you like to expand them on, make more specific? Then I'll ask the next part.
Okay. The main goal, especially for the index, was to get a gauge, right? How close, how far are we from reaching gender equity? So for the future, I'd really like to see more metrics on there, just because it will give us a bit better idea, a better understanding of the actual status of gender equity. But this is also very much tied to the challenge that we're seeing around gender data. If the data is not available by gender, well, there's not a lot that we're not able to add in that metric, right, to economic mobility or leadership, especially in leadership. As you probably saw, we only have 3 metrics. And you might be asking, okay, why aren't like women versus men that hold CEO positions on there? Well, because it's not available or it's not easily available. So there's also a lot of work that we have to do behind the scenes, and that takes time. It takes a lot of effort. So if it's not readily available for us, we're less likely to include it on there. So making sure that we're advocating for that, right? Let's get that information. Let's get that information locally so that the index can be improved to include more metrics that show the bigger picture. Areas that I'd like to expand, definitely leadership, definitely freedom from violence as well. I feel like we don't get we get a glimpse into what gender-based violence in our community looks like, but because again, it all just ties back to that lack of gender data, we're not able to see the full picture. And I also would like to note that the Gender Equity Index specifically is only gender, right? We're not including race, we're not including ethnicity, which are components that are very important for our community, being a 70% Hispanic community and just overall very diverse. So that is in part because the data is not available. So not only should we be advocating for the availability of gender data, but also racial and ethnic data with a gender lens. That is just very, very important.
I'll add to that. We're looking for additional funding because you saw it with the first one, we went the slowest one first. It's kind of hard to load that dashboard. It's a lot of work to put these things together, and we'd really like to make it more user friendly. So we are always looking for expanded funding. This is very labor intensive and it's a labor of love. And we know you don't want to do it. So if you can help us fund it, so Vivi, who likes to do it, and the amazing team can do it, that's another ask. So on with Diego's question. In whose eyes do you hope this data is able to reach the most? Like, do you have priorities or super wishes there?
My super wish is for funders, actually, because there is a lot of funders will invest in specific direct services, but the data and the research backs the need for these direct services. So having the funding or even government funding for these tools is just essential. So I really hope that government officials and funders look at this data and say, oh yeah, there is a gap in need here. We need to fund this work. We need to, it makes sense, right? That we need to shrink the gender data gap, and that by putting the eyes on the government officials and in the philanthropy space, we're able to do that. Just by the fact of it all is that less than 2% of all philanthropic dollars go into women and girls. And so if we're able to get more eyes on these tools from that particular space, they're able to fund it more, and then we're able to fund more programs that specifically serve women and girls, right? It's a domino effect.
I would add to that we look through this gender lens, a big gender lens, and we believe that when you specifically address gaps and needs in systems that were never designed originally with everybody in mind, you raise everyone up. So if a lot of our pay inequities come because many certain traditionally feminine occupations were not designed to be paid well, right? So what are the most important things that happen? Taking care of our kids, educating, taking care of our, our village elders. What's more important than that, right? So looking at rejigging systems and making them better makes the entire community better. The gender lens helps lift the entire community.
Mari, I just wanted to add really quickly to that, that the reason that a lot of these systems are not able or don't support a lot of the work that women do is because the data is biased, right? Because we don't have that gender lens on the data itself, the systems then go towards being more male centered. You can take a look at the medical field, right? Most of the studies are done on men. So there's no data. All right. So it's all linked, and the way that we change the systems is incredibly tied to data and the research that is available with the gender lens.
Yes, shining a light on issues is the most important thing we can do. Gender violence included, pay equity included, so much here. I'm going to go, Arthi has asked a question that, I know it's 10 o'clock, so we have to go, but quick, Viv, what are some of the, give 5 different ways that this data can be used. Applying for grants, we know that. Give us 4 more.
Applying for grants, applying it to your programs as measurements of success, and making sure that you're talking to policymakers using this data, looking at the self-sufficiency standard, and maybe if you have a direct program with families, making them sure that they know that actually, yeah, these are your costs, and that makes perfect sense. And then I would say also not just helping us support and advocate to add even more. So using it to validate that we need more, right? Making sure that we're using it and talking to our community partners and making sure that we're gathering more and more data locally.
And we thank you for being with us. You can volunteer with us. We have amazing committees as well. So if you're really into your Women's Fund, please contact me. Daniela and I will give you a little tour of the different ways that you can participate in your Women's Fund. If you want to support these impact collaboratives, you can do that here. And what else have we got? We'll be back in January with an amazing male-centered Truckers Against Trafficking plus your Women's Fund addressing demand, because if there is no buyer, there's no victim. And I just went from my present red to my giving thanks and gratitude orange, because I could not be any more grateful to live in a community that brings people like you all together, to have you so engaged, so smart, so savvy, so capable. And I look forward to celebrating 2025 with you all. Power of the Purse is March 14th, early this year, right in the middle of Women's History Month. So keep on our e-blasts. We'll see you in January at this Impact Collaborative, and we'll see you on March 14th for Power of the Purse as well. I got to say it. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.